Minimum wage to be addressed. We've got the details coming up in the Bahamas tonight.
Coming up in the Bahamas tonight, 2 men sentenced to almost 2 decades for attempting to kill a senior police officer.
And find out why these men were in court. The Bahamas tonight. The National Report starts now.
Now in HD. ZNS Network presents The Bahamas Tonight. This portion of the news brought to you by BTC Every Day.
Breaking news off the top tonight, BTC announced a top-level change at the telecom.
The change will mean a major shakeup at the top levels of the company. Tues Munnings has more tonight on what the change will mean.
Houston is out and Williams is in. On Tuesday, Chief Executive Officer of Cable and Wireless Communications, Phil Bentley, announced right here at BTC's boardroom that Leon Williams has been appointed the new CEO of the company once Jeff Houston's resignation comes into effect later this summer. Mr. Bentley is quite satisfied with Mr. Williams' reputation in telecommunications, saying that he wanted to have a representative of the company who is Bahamian and who will win the hearts and minds of Bahamians everywhere, and he's no doubt assured that Mr. Williams will lead BTC into its next phase. Now, responding to the appointment, Mr. Williams said that this is an uncommonly blessed opportunity that he has now been awarded, and he thanks Bahamians everywhere who has supported him over these years.
Let me just say categorically, this was a decision that I have taken. I have been under no pressure whatsoever from the BTC board. I have been under no pressure whatsoever from the Prime Minister.
We've got a lot of work to do to prepare this company for competition, and not just competition, but we really need to be able to prepare the company to serve the customers.
Mr. Bentley also announced today a $200 million investment that CWC will mount into BTC. This will ensure that technology is improved, customer service is enhanced, and that BTC will remain on the competitive edge, not only in the region, but around the world.
We'll be investing in improving our mobile network. We are aware that drop calls is still an issue in the business. We will be investing in new IP, internet protocol technologies that leverages our fixed networks with our mobile networks. We'll also be investing in our IP TV.
Now, Mr. Bentley also told reporters today that a second wireless license is imminent and it will be awarded very soon. That's why he wants to ensure that BTC remains on the competitive edge, and he's encouraging all Bahamians to remain with BTC and accept all that the company will offer now and in the future. We'll have more for you on this new management structure at BTC in a later newscast. Reporting from BTC's headquarters on John F. Kennedy Drive, I'm Tues Munnings, ZNS Network News.
Meantime, if you are one of the many Bahamian investors hoping to buy shares in BTC, then you're out of luck, as the sale of 9% of government to the public, which was negotiated in the first deal struck with Cable and Wireless, has been cancelled.
Arcandino Knowles tells us tonight what the government plans to do in lieu of the new arrangements and how liberalization will make up for the change.
The agreement struck by the Free National Movement government with Cable and Wireless provided for the government to sell 9% of its 49% ownership stake in BTC to the public at the same price per share paid by Cable and Wireless before the end of 2012. But it seems the offer is off the table after government recently renegotiated the deal with BTC's owners.
We cancelled that and in fact demonstrated our seriousness by cancelling it, because cancellation costs us some monies.
And while Prime Minister Perry Christie did not reveal the exact cost, he said the decision had to be made to ensure the best interest of the Bahamian people.
One of the concerns we have with respect to the shares of BTC is that BTC owns the cable network that connects all of the Bahamas, and it would seem to me to be essential for the government of the Bahamas to retain significant shareholding on the BTC board, because that controls the entire communication system of our country.
The Prime Minister's announcement comes just over a week after he tabled the new fiscal budget in Parliament, where he talked about the liberalization plans for the telecommunications sector. ending the decades-long monopoly held by BTC in the mobile service. It was during that time the Prime Minister announced a task force had been selected to accept applications for new mobile service carriers. And while Bahamians may no longer be able to buy shares in BTC, ownership opportunities in future mobile service providers is a priority.
The government will in fact ultimately cause there to be shares sold to the Bahamian public with specific reference to liberalization, that whatever we do, ultimately the ultimate outcome will be the shares will be made available to the Bahamian public on the liberalized competitor to BTC.
The Prime Minister says companies asking for a mobile service provider license will go through a two-tier process that will be extensive. In fact, Phase 1 will involve an evaluation of proposals and will be based on a predetermined criteria to identify the best possible candidates. And in addition to technical and financial capabilities, he said government will also consider the extent to which applicants offer the widest opportunity for Bahamian ownership. Kendino Knowles, ZNS Network News.
Prime Minister Perry Christie sums up the 2014-2015 budget as one which addresses international concerns while at the same time seeking to stabilize and grow the local economy. The nation's leader, while marching with workers at this year's Labor Day parade, said the government's move to implement value-added tax will spare the country any downgrade, but in the end will provide the strong footing the country's economy needs to ensure stability once again and meet the requirements from international credit ratings agencies and financial centers which demand new revenue-generating measures.
I'm doing, I think, a great job in being able to control expenses, and we're headed in the right direction. I'm very near all the projections I made next year, but the difficulty is I have to govern. And so when somebody develops in Bimini or San Salvador, as the case might be, I have to find a way to put in infrastructure. What we're now trying to do is to be creative and have private sector put in the infrastructure, and therefore I don't have to borrow, but I'll have to pay them.
From the courts tonight, after at least 2 adjournments, the 2 men convicted of the attempted murder and attempted armed robbery of Police Superintendent Clayton Fernander learned their fate this morning. Jibanita Swain was there and has reaction to the sentencing from Superintendent Fernander.
21-year-old Excel Josie, wearing the white T-shirt, was given 17 years for attempted murder and 14 years for attempted armed robbery, while his co-accused Maurice Ambrista was sentenced to 19 years for attempted murder and 14 years for attempted armed robbery. Ambrista was also sentenced to 9 years for possession of a firearm and ammunition. In passing sentence, Justice Carolita Bethel indicated that Maurice Ambrista was, quote, unrepentant, end quote. Superintendent Clayton Fernandez spoke with ZNS News outside of court following the sentencing. He said his family is pleased with the outcome of the case.
We feel good about it. There was a little delay with respect to the sentencing, but I had no problem with it. We want to limit as much grounds for any kind of appeal, so I had no problem. The prosecution had no problem with respect to the delay.
Fernandez said as an officer for more than 30 years, he has conducted a number of interviews with victims of crime, and he could only imagine what those families were going through until now.
I personally now could speak to it, and I want to just encourage the victims of crime to be strong, and I want to say I am there for them. Doing the wrap-up with respect to the probation report, as you could see, one of the accused is now admitting to the matter, and I want to say to the prosecution and investigators that we have to leave nothing unturned, because the culprits will try to beat the system.
It was revealed in the probation report that Josie took responsibility for his actions and expressed remorse and said Ambrista was the mastermind. Ambrista has not accepted responsibility for the crime and maintains he was not involved. Fernandez said he recently completed another surgery for the injuries he sustained.
I went on a second surgery about 2 to 3 months ago, and I'm still doing therapy, but I'm in good health. The doctor gave the go-ahead to return back to work, and I'm now the officer in charge of the Southern Division. That's at Market and Quacker Street. I feel good.
Superintendent Fernandez says he's ready to serve the Bahamian people. Now the sentences for Josie and Ambrista, who attempted to kill the senior officer, will commence from the date of their conviction back in February. Jibanita Swain, ZNS Network News.
Also from the court beat, 30-year-old Ronnie Seaford was found guilty by unanimous verdict this afternoon. 3 witnesses were called in the case heard by Justice Indra Charles. The particulars of the charge were that Seaford, on March 14, 2011, along with another man, robbed Akeem Wilson at gunpoint of cash and a cell phone. The incident unfolded at the Twilight Bar in Montel Heights. Now, it was not until about 9 months following the crime that Wilson said Seaford walked into the Twilight Bar and ordered a drink before exiting the bar. The victim contacted police and Seaford was subsequently charged. He was remanded to Her Majesty's Prison until July 24th at 10 a.m. when he will return to court for sentencing. Seaford was represented by Terrell Butler, while Anthony Delaney and Kendra Kelly represented the Crown.
Well, still to come, a theme park owner says he's not taking unemployed workers on a ride. We'll explain.
And volleyball's attention turns to the region. You're watching The Bahamas Tonight.
This segment of the news is brought to you by Shell Quality Fuels.